Mr. Madison, the Industrial Revolution changed the face of the modern novel forever. Discuss, citing specific examples. Okay. The Industrial Revolution to me is just like a story I know called The Puppy Who Lost His Way. The world was changing, and the puppy was getting bigger. So you see, the puppy was just like industry in that they were both lost in the woods. And nobody, especially the little boy, society, knew where to find him. Except that the puppy was a dog. But the industry, my friends, that was a revolution. Mr. Madison, what you have just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have been fine, but...
Good morning. My name is Ryan Szykowny, and I'm a 6th form day student from Avon, Connecticut. I live in a neighborhood named Buckingham, which, believe it or not, is considered to be one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Avon. Yes, the suburb of Avon actually has some diversity. There are many intriguing elements of living in a diverse neighborhood, such as figuring out which holiday has prompted the family down the road to decorate their yard with festive colored lights in the middle of March, or wondering which house is cooking the delicious, spicy food that's causing the air to burn my lungs as I attempt to run in preparation for cross-country season. Certainly, there are a ton of positives of living in my neighborhood. However, one negative for my family is the large language barrier that essentially lowered a dome of isolation to fall over my house while I was growing up. Mandarin, Hindi, and Spanish are the 3 languages spoken by my surrounding neighbors. This prevents any of the classic neighborly chatter that I've always longed for while my neighbor and I go to check the mailbox at the same time. Consequently, my family's lack of communication with other families produced a childhood without visits to family friends for the Super Bowl, New Year's, summertime barbecues, or any other typical neighborly bonding time. I believe all of my traits and characteristics accumulated as a result of spending way too much time with just my parents and older brother for the past 17 years. One such characteristic is a fiery competitiveness that I've always embraced. And until attending Westminster, I never realized that not everyone shares a similar competitiveness while going about their daily lives. I have come to understand that my family and I are more competitive than most others. Honestly, it probably should not have taken me so long to realize that my family was to blame for my own competitiveness. Every car ride to and from hockey practice and lacrosse games as a child was filled with seemingly non-stop lectures from my dad about how if he were out on the ice, he would have made sure to score that goal or destroy that kid along the boards. As a side note, I'm assuming that these speeches by parents who almost seem more devoted to the game than you are as a kid are universal and that each one of you can relate similarly. Anyways, you might be wondering how I knew my competitiveness runs in the family if I was never able to see my dad in his prime, as he likes to say. My first clue came when I used to play roller hockey with my brother Jake at a rink in Plainville. At our first game, my dad informed us that he used to play here as well. As we were getting ready, we were watching some older guys playing in the game before us, and my dad said it looked like fun and how he wished he could be playing. My next question seemed pretty obvious. Well, Dad, if you want to still play, why don't you join a team? Nonchalantly, he chuckled and proudly told us that he is not allowed to play here anymore as he is currently still serving his second lifetime ban for fighting a referee during a game. Now, if you've ever seen my dad, he does not appear to be a habitual referee fighter. However, in the Szykowny family, a little competitiveness goes a long way. Even now, when I recently informed my dad that I would be including this story in my chapel talk, he laughed at the memory of the fights, and he wanted me to make sure to emphasize to the Westminster community just how tough he is. The next step in my investigation towards figuring out the origin of my competitiveness involved looking into my relationship with my brother. Jake graduated from Westy last year, as we are only a year apart in age. Since we grew up very close together, we were always involved in similar activities, and we were constantly competing against each other. But only in the most important activities, of course, like video games, ping pong, mini golf, etc. Because he is a year older, Jake has always been a little bit bigger, taller, faster, stronger, and a lot of it smarter than I am, which meant he would always win. But being the stubborn competitor I am, each loss would make me more determined to win the next time. As we got older, I would start to win more, and he started to become the angry, sore loser. One distinct memory that comes to mind was when we went as a family to play a round of mini golf. On this particular day, Jake was not playing his best, and his frustration was building. Now, I can't really blame Jake here. Sometimes the ball just won't go home, as Happy Gilmore would say. Despite being surrounded by numerous families who were all enjoying a little game of mini golf with their children and loved ones, one fateful hole pushed Jake over the edge. With his putter, he drove his ball off the course into the car-filled parking lot and then threw his putter halfway across the course before storming off. But that's just a typical day of fun for the Szykowny family. The first time I personally started to embrace my competitiveness was when I became friends with Chris Whipple in elementary and middle school. Up to this point, my competitiveness had been limited to my life at home with my family, but Chris and I began to compete in school. In possibly the nerdiest competition ever imagined, in 7th grade, we would print out blank maps of the United States and race to fill them out as quickly as possible, always determined to beat each other. Yes, I know, looking back, it's definitely as lame as it sounds. The following year in 8th grade, my competitive nature increased in school, but again, not really in the way you would expect. I went to Avon Middle School, and in 8th grade, you get to pick 2 electives that are supposed to be fun classes for your last year of middle school. But, with my luck, I did not receive any of my top choices. And on the first day of school, while all my friends were having a blast in their first choice art class, I found myself angrily pouting in sewing class. Sitting next to me in sewing class was a girl who actually knew how to sew. And this would have been perfectly fine with me, except she made it very clear she was better than I was. Let me say that trash talking in sewing class is an incredibly bold move to begin with, and there's no way she was prepared for the sewing wrath I would unleash on her for the rest of the year. While the other kids who were placed in sewing class against their will were messing with the settings on the sewing machines to make them sound like machine guns, I was putting all my efforts towards being better and perfecting my sewing. At the end of the year, I was one of the very few students to finish their final projects. My project was a pair of perfectly crafted pajama pants with rubber ducks on them. Pointless competitions similar to these have continued into high school, and this past fall, Chris and I tried to see who could wear shorts the longest. Was the competition stupid? To be honest, yeah, it probably was. But there was no chance I'm going to lose to Chris in anything as long as I could help it. By the way, to clear things up, it was a tie. The common phrase we've always been told is, not everything has to be a competition. But I will proudly stand as a firm believer that competition can push you to be the best version of yourself. My path through Westminster has been carved in large part by my competitiveness, starting in my freshman year when I beat Connor Seeley on a map quiz in Miss Heckman's global history class. Even now, in this past fall of senior year, Chris Whipple and I would compete every day in cross country to beat each other, even in the warm-up laps. I strongly encourage you all to embrace the competitiveness that lives inside you and see if it can't motivate you to do better in the different aspects of your daily life. This could be in academics. I apologize in advance to all the teachers who hate when students compete against each other. Or on the field when we proudly represent Westminster during athletic competitions. Or maybe it's as simple as competing just to try to be the kindest person on campus. Thank you.